If you do have any questions throughout the webcast, please can you submit them using the instant message facility on your link window. If you're not logged in via link, you can email us, and that's on inquiries@risual.com. Again, that's inquiries@risual.com. Your phones will be muted during the webcast, and that's just to eliminate any background noise. However, at the end of the webcast, we will take you off mute should you have any questions for us. And finally, we are recording today's webcast, and we'll provide you all with a link to that in a follow-up email so that you can listen again or share amongst your colleagues. So before I hand over to Matt, just wanted to give you a quick introduction into Risual and how we engage with our customers. Risual are a 100% Microsoft-focused company. We provide consulting and managed services to build and support your investments in Microsoft solutions. We're one of the top, if not the top, services partner for Microsoft in the UK today. And in terms of how we're structured, we have 3 distinct business divisions. That is around technical consultancy, business consultancy, and managed services. Technical consultancy is split into 4 practice areas, and that would be business productivity, where Matt sits. That incorporates the likes of BI, SharePoint, and CRM. UC and messaging would be Link and Exchange. Systems management, it would be the System Center suite of products. And identity access perimeter, which would be Active Directory, ADFS, Forefront Identity Manager, and so on. We currently employ in excess of 50 consultants, all of whom are specialists. We don't employ any generalists. To that extent, we see ourselves very much as a technical powerhouse in the industry today. Sorry, skip the slide. Second part of the business is our business consulting division. This is typically utilised for longer-term engagements using program and project management to ensure the smooth running of projects and to realise transformational benefit on your investment in Microsoft. Finally, our managed services business, and this essentially will optimise and manage your Microsoft estate. I will talk about this in more detail at the end of the call. As you'd expect, we have all the relevant gold and silver accreditations required for a fully focused Microsoft partner. So typical conversations that we have with our customers on a daily basis are around 2 things really, and that's either improving costs or improving outcomes. Here at Risual, we're a big believer that technology is seen as an enabler across your organisation to ensure cost efficiencies are realised within the business. So typically we'll talk to customers about customer service empowerment, how each of you are dealing with your customers, be that patients, students, partners, and so on. How you interact with these organisations, how you partner, how you collaborate, and how you share information. Ultimately, how you maintain the quality of the service you provide. And for us, when we're talking about IT, it's IT at the heart of positive change. We focus on driving our conversations around business transformation, looking at how IT can enable organisations to develop moving forward. We do this by utilising our 3 customer-ready strategies. So first, we would need to understand, how do you engage with your customers today? Are you dealing with them in the right way? Is it quick and is it efficient? And are your staff empowered to deal with your business strategy? If we know what that business strategy is, and how do we provide an infrastructure to underpin that, which will drive the best out of enhanced operations and processes? So our 3 propositions in support of this are connected business, user computing, and optimized service vision. Underpinning these strategies is a whole host of Microsoft products, as you'd expect. And when we're talking about BI and specifically information access, BI has a part to play in all of these areas. So that was a very quick insight into us as a business. I'm now going to pass you across to Matt for the main body of our presentation.
Okay, thanks, Ian. Good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining. So we're going to go through Power BI for Office 365 today and look at self-service BI that's available in Power BI for Office 365. Now, Power BI is a collection of services and features that enable your organization to share, visualize, and analyze data in a collaborative self-service fashion. So Power BI for Office 365 can connect to a mix of on-premises and Azure data sources, and these can all be automatically refreshed on a fixed schedule. And all the functionality in Power BI for Office 365 is packaged so any organization can easily implement and use it. So who uses Power BI? Well, end users, as I've got in here, report consumers, they've long wanted the ability to easily access and analyze data. In Power BI for Office 365, there's a natural language query and intelligent visualization engine that will help every employee to use it to end how Power BI and Office 365 work. So we have report creators. These are your Excel power users, your people in your businesses that really understand the data. And they'll be using Excel to extract that data, to shape that data, get that data into visualizations, and then collaborate and share those through Office 365. And finally, we have data stewards, and these are the people that provide the governance, the security, and the auditing of data and queries and data sources. So Power BI starts with Excel, and it starts on the left-hand side here with Power Query. And what Power Query enables you to do is discover your data and shape your data and get it into a form where you can get some good BI from it. So this also provides merge capability and transformational capabilities. Now I'll show you some of that. So for those people that are familiar with SQL Server and integration services, this is kind of, you can think of this as the lightweight version of integration services within Excel. So once I've got my data in Excel, I can move that then into Power Pivot. Now, from Power Query, I get the option to put my data into a basic Excel sheet. There are limitations there in terms of the number of rows and the amount of data I can include in sheets. So what Power Pivot does is it provides an in-memory analytical database within Excel. And what people can do then is they can define relationships between their data and their tables. They can define hierarchies in their data and also KPIs, key performance indicators. And then they can use these hierarchies to provide drill down capabilities in the report and use the KPIs to provide traffic lights and dashboard information. So Power View, the third column along there, provides the visualizations and along with Power Map. And Power Map, it provides a 3D mapping experience, whereas Power View provides tables, charts, graphs. There's a two-dimensional mapping capability within Power View as well. Okay, so once we've got our reports and our visualizations chart in Excel, we want to be able to collaborate with those in Office 365. So this is what the Power BI for Office 365 provides for you. You get Power BI Site, and this is where you can share, view, and interact with reports and data. You can share queries. So these are the this allows other individuals to build their own reports based off your shared queries. You can schedule data refresh of your cloud-based reporting with on-premise data and also some cloud-based data sources as well. There's a data search capability that allows you to maintain a catalog of searchable queries that you create through Power Query. There's mobile access using Power BI Windows app, along with HTML5 that's available in Power View for non-Windows OS devices. And as I mentioned, the last thing that you get there is the natural language questions, which is called Power Q&A. So with that, I'm going to jump into the demos. I want to show you how some of this works so you can see it in action. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully you can see that. So hopefully, either now or in a few moments, you'll see a copy of Excel opened up. So as I said, Power BI starts with Power Query. So we're going to go in here and have a look at Power Query and drag some data in today. So just to give you a flavor of the types of data sources that are available in Power Query, and this is being worked on all the time, by the way. There's a whole team at Microsoft that are dedicated to enhancing Power Query with additional sources. So we've got basic from web here. You can enter a web page URL and it'll pull in data from that URL. We've got from file options. So as you'd expect, Excel, but also CSV, XML. You can import data from a text file and from a folder. We've got a lot of database sources, IBM, DB2, MySQL, Sybase, and so on in there, and also Azure SQL database. Some other interesting sources, SharePoint list, OData feeds, Windows Azure Marketplace, and these are, if you've seen the Azure Marketplace, you'll notice that there's a whole bunch of data sources out there that you can pay for and use them within Power Query and within your reporting. So we've got various Azure, blob, table sources, Active Directory there, and even Facebook right at the bottom. And I think they've extended this further. Yeah. So recently, I think over the last few months, we've got the SAP Business Objects BI Universe, and even a blank query. You can write a query from scratch. So what Power Query in the background comes with is its own language called M. I'm not quite sure what M stands for, but it's called M, the letter M. And it enables you to write your own script in Power Query. So what we're going to do today, we're going to grab some data from the web, and there's this great little source actually called Gapminder with some data sources. So my wife's been on at me lately to lose weight, so I'm just going to look at some BMI data here, and I'm going to copy this shortcut, this link to this BMI data out on the web on Gapminder, and I'm going to paste that into my web page URL in Power Query. So Power Query is going to go out now, and it's going to analyze that data source, and you can see in the navigator on the right-hand side, within that link, it actually links to an Excel document. It's found these particular tabular data sources. And as you can see, as I hover over those, it gives us a preview of the data that's available in that document. So here on the data tab, this is the one we want. And you can see we've got a list of countries and the BMI by year for each of those companies going from 1980 all the way up to 2008. So we're going to double click on that and then bring that into Power Query here. So as you can see, the first thing we want to do is hit this button to use the first row as headers. So I'll click that and that should move up. So that's great. Now, in order to get some better BI out of this, we want to be able to look at each country by year. And as you can see, the years are split by columns here. Now, to make this a lot easier for us to analyze, what we can do is we're going to go ahead and select all of these columns. I'm going to go to my Transform tab here, and I'm going to unpivot these columns. So as you can see, instead of the data being in a columnar format, it's now put the data in rows. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename this column here. I'm going to call this year, and this column I'm going to rename. I'm going to call that my BMI. So just to add in here, so at the moment I'm using an internet-based source, but in a corporate or in a work environment, this could be an SQL Server data source connecting to your data warehouse. and one of your employees could be pulling data from that data warehouse to analyze and join up with other data that might be in Excel spreadsheets or in other data sources throughout the organization. So I'm doing this. You can see on the right-hand side here, this is what I call the recipe. So these are the steps that Power Query is applying to this particular data source in order to get it into this shape. So there's one other thing I'm going to do here. I'm going to change the data type of the year column. I'm going to say that's a whole number. So I'm going to name my data query as BMI. I'm going to go back to home. And I'm going to close and load that. Now, I get an option to either load that into a table in Excel, or I can load it to the data model, which is the Power Pivot in-memory database. Now, I want to be able to join this data with some other data, so I'm just gonna only create the connection at the moment, and you'll see why when we bring some more data in. So, what I thought would be interesting to just take a quick look at here is to combine this BMI data with GDP data. So, GDP is gross domestic product. I'm certainly not an economist, but as I understand, it's the total value of all goods and services produced by a country in a particular year. So what we can do is we can go back to Gapminder and get some data, which is this GDP per person. So the GDP is a good indicator of wealth. So what's interesting to see in Power Query and in our visualizations is how BMI is affected by growth or otherwise in GDP. So I'm just going to create another query here. I'm going to paste my data in there. Once again, Power Query is going to go off to this data source. Let's see what that's gone. Okay, let me double click data. We should bring that in here. Okay, great. So once again, I'm going to use the first row as headers there. This GDP data, as you can see, goes all the way back to 1800. So what we want to do is some extra steps in here to shape this data. And we're going to go right the way up to our 1979. We'll remove those columns. And the next thing we'll do, once again, we'll pivot or unpivot the columns on the transform. Okay, great. We'll rename some columns again here. So we'll call this one country. We'll call this one year. And this is our rename, GDP, by its per capita. So great. So I'm just going to change the data type of year once again to whole number. We're done with that data set. So again, I'm going to close and load, and just to create the connection here. So we've got in fact, one of the things I'll do here just to make this nice, I'll rename that to GDP so that we can see where our GDP data is. So we've got our GDP and BMI data, and what we now want to do is merge these two data sets. So I'm going to take my BMI data and I take my GDP data, and I'm going to look at my key columns here, which is country and year. And great, as you can see in the bottom there, this selection's matched the 5,771 rows in BMI. So I'll OK that, and Power Query will go off and join that data, and it produces this data, the joined up data, in a new column, so I can decide which columns that I want. Well, I've already got country and year. I'm really interested in GDP per capita to add next to my BMI. So I'll rename that column. And close and load. And this time, I'm going to load this into a table in a new worksheet so we can analyze this data. So there we go. We've got our merged BMI and GDP per capita data. I'm going to go ahead and save this to where convenient. Have a look on desktop. We'll use this in a few moments. GDP, BMI. Okay, great. So we've got our data in, and we can start doing some visualizations with Power View. So I'm going to go ahead and insert the Power View now. And as I said, we've got tables. There's charts in here, line charts. I'll just show you some of the options in here. There's a 2D map. We can switch to line, scatter, pie chart, column chart, bar chart, and tables and matrix, and there's a card format in there. So what we're going to do with our data is I really like the scatter diagram. I'm just going to change this data into a scatter diagram. And obviously what I need to do here is change some of the axes and what I've got on the axes here. So I'm going to have BMI on my X value, and I'm going to have my GDP per capita on my Y value. And the details is the country, and also I'm going to transfer year to my play axis. One of the really nice things here, in fact, let's also have a filter on country. If we take, as you can see, what Power View is doing here is it's just showing a representative sample because there are so many data points with all these countries. But what we can do if we take just a couple of countries at random here. So let's take Mauritania and Mali. So what we can get Power View to do is just play over the last few years from 1980 up to 2008, and we can see what happened to the BMI versus GDP for these countries. And in fact, this one here, what's interesting, if we just stop, let me pick on this one. Actually, GDP hasn't risen. In fact, it's fallen, but BMI seems to have gone up. It's just increased over the years. Let's just see that continue to increase. Obviously, that's interesting there because we can see that there was a big leap in GDP, we've also had a corresponding increase in BMI there. So again, who else did we pick? So this is another country down here. If I hover over the data point here, I can see that Mali is just been slowly increasing again BMI over the years. So these are some of the visualizations that you can do, and this is one of the more interesting ones. Certainly, I think it's one of the more interesting ones in Power View. So that's great. I've got some nice data in my document. One of the things I'm just going to go back to Power Query and show you what happens now with Office 365. What I can do with my query is I can share this in the Power BI for Office 365 data catalog. So this enables my colleague to be able to search for corporate and organizational queries that people have shared. So I'm going to send this to my data catalog. I'm going to call this GDP and BMI. And just here on the sharing tab, you can see who we're actually sharing with. So you can share your queries with everyone in the enterprise or just specific groups of people. So I'm going to share this with everyone just to give you a sense of how this works. So my query, my recipe for creating this data has gone off and it's stored in my Power BI for Office 365 now. Now, somebody else in the organization could come in and they could hit this online search in Power Query. Now, say they're interested in data about BMI. So the first thing that's come up are queries that are available in my organization. And there's my query that I just published in my organization. So this could be any query that's generated by people within your organization that they've shared through Power BI for Office 365. There are also a shed load of public query data sources that are approved by Microsoft on the public tab that I've just clicked on there, just to show you that there's all sorts out there from movie data, and a lot of the sources tend to be Wikipedia, and there's some World Bank sources there as well. So somebody, I'm not going to do it now because I've already got my query in my workbook, but somebody searched for this particular query, they found it, they double click on that there, it opens that query in their workbook, they can then execute that query, it'll perform the steps in the recipe, it'll go out to the internet, pull those files from those links, assuming they still exist, and then do those transformational steps that we defined to change the columns into rows and so on, and pull that data into their Excel document, and then they can further analyze that data and produce different visualizations. So that's how the query sharing works, and we're going to come back to that in a few moments. But what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to save this document, and I'm going to close that down. I'm going to switch to Office 365. And the first thing I'm going to show you in Office 365 is the Power BI gallery that you get. Now, when this loads up, you'll see that we get some really nice thumbnails based on the visualizations that are in our document. So what we're going to do is we're going to add our new visualization into our Power BI for Office 365. So I'm going to go back to desktop where I saved it, and there it is. Open that up. And as you can see, that's just appearing there, and Power BI for Office 365 is just generating the preview of that report. So what we can also do with our reports is we can add them as featured reports. So that means if I add this as a featured report, it will appear in the featured reports on the top of the page here. So I'll just show you that now. So there's our GDP BMI report. So somebody that doesn't have Excel installed on their machine, they may be out in the field using a tablet and want to look at the reporting. So they browse to their Office 365 site, and they can click on this report, and they can open it up in the browser. I'm just going to, in a few moments, hopefully our report will appear with our Power View in it. So, and there it is. And this is, of course, interactive as well, just like it is when using Power View in Excel. I can add countries and look at the filters that I added to my report here, and I can, again, play through and see what happens over the years there as time passes and GDP and BMI change. So that's great. So we've got the ability for people to just, those report consumers, to go out, anybody in your organization, and view those reports. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come out of here and go back to Power BI. So this is the Power BI gallery. So people that are familiar with SharePoint will probably be thinking to themselves, well, that's the same as Excel services. So if you've just got a basic SharePoint, this kind of capability is available. So I'm going back into SharePoint. I've come out of Power BI. I'm just going to click on my document here, and it appears. I see the report appear. Down here on the right-hand side, I'm just going to point out the HTML5 version of Power View in case you're using an HTML5 compliant device that you want to view the reports on. So the main difference that you get between SharePoint and Power BI is that in Power BI, you have support for workbooks up to 250 megabytes in size, and that's compressed data. So obviously you get a lot more in than your 250 megabyte. And SharePoint rather, only has support for workbooks, SharePoint Online, I should say, for workbooks up to 10 megabyte compressed data. So you get the extra size with Power BI. We also get the ability to schedule data refresh. from on-premise data sources and also some data sources out on the web there. And I'll talk about those permissible data sources that you can use in Power BI for Office 365 a bit later on. So also we can add this document into the Q&A to be able to ask questions and answers on the data. Now, there's some work in terms of setting up Q&A, but we've got some demos in here, and I'll show you exactly how that Q&A works. So there's the option there to schedule the data refresh, and if you want to do that. So I'm just going to move to show you the Power BI Q&A functionality. So there's a couple of documents that have been added to Q&A here. One is Olympic data, and another one is data from the World Bank. So what I can do now is I can just go ahead and start asking questions. So let's have a look at, say, the population of the UK versus Japan. And this, what Power Q&A does is it tries to find what it thinks is the most appropriate visualization based on the question that you've asked. So what Power Q&A thinks is great to do here is to provide a map. So I can, if I hover over United Kingdom, I can see we're at just over 63 million there, and Japan at 127 million. But I can also change the visualization on the fly. So if I want to choose a pie chart there, or a line chart, which is not going to be very interesting based on the question I've asked, or just to get the data in a table, I can do those changes. So let's have a look and see how the population has changed over time. And so just to make sure I've hopefully articulated how this works well to you, it really, it's just easy for anybody to use, to just go in and you can try asking questions of any of the data in the Excel workbooks that you've got in your Power BI for Office 365. So let's have a look at from, I don't know, 1998 to 2005 by year. Let's see what happens there. So what it's decided to do is present the answer to the question in a line chart. Obviously, there's been a gradual increase. Hopefully you can see that on your screens in the population between 1998 and 2005. Now, over here, it's telling me that the results are coming from the World Bank indicators sample. Now, what I can also do is start asking questions with words that might be related to the Olympics. So let's have who won the most medals. Let's just try that, see what comes out. So I've just put that question in, and it's decided to give me a bar chart there, and I can see that USA has won the most medals, 2,490 by miles over the history of the Olympics there. So we might have multiple workbooks in here, but we can get the result. Power Q&A pulls the results in what it thinks is the best data source to match the question that you're asking. So I really like this. I think this is absolutely fantastic way for non-technical people to go in and just explore their data and just get answers to basic business questions, which may be, how many widgets did we make last week? Assuming that data is in an Excel document, or how many widgets have we made in 2014 so far, and by month. And very quickly, we can start to get some really nice visualizations and answers to our questions, assuming we have the data in there. So just to show you, I'm going to go back to the Power BI site here. And I'm going to go to site settings and show you how the configuration of the Power Q&A works, just to give you a sense of what needs to be done. It's not difficult. And there's actually certainly now plenty of information out there on the internet to help you get Power Q&A working. So I'm going to click Power Q&A, and we can see the enabled Q&A workbooks in here. So I'm just going to click the Optimize for Q&A, and this is where you define synonyms and phrasings to help Power Q&A answer your questions better. So as you can see, there's synonyms that we've got for country that have been added in here, and various phrasings. Obviously, these can be refined over time based on the queries that people are asking. And even in the interface where you can ask the queries, you can flag queries that are just giving you weird results. And then those can be picked up and investigated. So that's a kind of behind the scene, the configuration that needs to be put in place. So it's really getting the phrasings and so on right in the Power Q&A configuration. So that's Power Q&A. We're just going to have a quick look at the admin side of Power BI now. Now, this is where you have the opportunity to set up various connections back to your on-premise data sources. So what you get with Power BI for Office 365 is something called the Data Management Gateway that you install on servers in your on-premise servers, and this will securely provide a connection from your cloud-based reports back to your on-premise data sources. And that's all configured in here. As you can see, my particular gateway is not running today, but this is this is where you configure all of that to set it up to get to on-premise data sources. So just to complete the picture of Power BI for Office 365, I'll show you the Power BI app. I'm just going to start that up now. So this is an app. I'm obviously running this on my laptop here, but this could be on a Windows tablet device, and it works with touch. So I need to sign back in here, my tenant. If you bear with me a moment. Hopefully I got my password right. Great. So immediately what I see are the report that I favorited in Power BI, and these appear on my favorites tab here in the app. I can also browse through my reports with the browse section here. There are some samples that are supplied by Microsoft when you install the Power BI app. So incidentally, this is available in the Microsoft Store for, I believe it's Windows 8.1 based devices. So if you search that in there, you can pull the app out and install it. So just to show you some capability that was added relatively recently to Power BI is the ability to do forecasting and hindcasting. I'm going to click United Kingdom here, and what we're seeing are the birth trends for the United Kingdom since 2004. What surprised me when I first looked at this data, just as a quick aside here, is how it really varies by month. And you start to realize that births really drop off in February. So I guess it must be a rarer thing to have a birthday in February compared to let's see here what we've got: August, September seem to be the most popular months for birth. Anyway, so over on the right hand side here, we can start to look at some forecasting, and I can drag this out, and this would be great if I had a touch sensitive screen and you could see what I was doing here. I can drag this out and it will predict the future for me. So as you can see, based on the data, the past data, it's attempted to predict what's going to happen in terms of birth trends in the UK. It's going to go up, which is, I suspect, what we all expect. So also we can go back and see how it would have forecast the future based on data. So as you can see, it's reasonably close, particularly in this area here. So some nice little forecast and hindcast capability, which is available in the Power BI app and also the HTML5 view of your Power BI report. One other little thing to mention in Power BI for Office 365 are the Power BI sites. And this comes back to the ability to share queries in Power Query. Now, I've got my favorite reports in here, but also if I click on the data tab, I can see my Power Queries that I've shared, and I can also look at the usage of those queries over the last 30 days. Now, this isn't going to be very interesting in terms of a chart because this is my Office 365 tenant and nobody else goes in here, so nobody else pulls the queries. But if this was an organization and people were searching for queries and they were using those queries, pulling the data down into their own Excel documents using the recipes that are stored in Power Query, we'd be able to see the usage. And as you can see in here, we've got the GDP and BMI query that's out there and available for users to search on in Power Query and Excel. So a great way of seeing which queries are used, which are really useful to people, which aren't so useful that when it can ask you to look at whether you've named them correctly, whether people are able to find them in the search, whether they really are useful to people. A good way of managing potential bloat that you could get in an organization with people sharing a whole load of queries. So some nice analytics there, in my humble opinion, in my Power BI. And I think in terms of demos, and what I wanted to show you and the capability of Power BI for Office 365, I've come to an end there, so I'm just going to switch back to the presentation. Bear with me a moment. Okay. So hopefully that works and you're about to see the presentation. It's just loading my end, so hopefully it's doing the same yours. Great. Okay. So one of the things that I really wanted to mention here, you get your reports out there in the clouds, and there are certain permissible sources for Office 365 data refresh, just so people understand where you can go to refresh your reports. Obviously, if you have an unsupported data source, you always have the opportunity to download your Excel document, refresh from the data source, and then re-upload a copy so that data is stored within the Excel document and goes back up to the cloud. So the data refresh supports on-premise SQL Server, an on-premise Oracle, OData feed, Azure SQL database, and also SQL Server running in Azure VMs on the cloud. So the OData feed, if people aren't familiar with that, that's a way of getting data over HTTP. So, for example, a SharePoint list will expose itself as an OData feed. So if you have data in your Office 365 tenant in a SharePoint list, you could pull that into your automatically into your Power BI reports. So recently I've been doing work with one of our customers that uses Project Online, and the data in Project Online and the Project Web App is exposed as an OData feed. We're able to extract data from Project Server and get some nice visualizations in Power BI for people to go and look at some nice reporting out of Project Server. So just one final slide here, just to give you a flavor of what's coming. So these are rumors at the moment, and the last that we heard from Microsoft was these would be around late summer 2014. So they're a little late with these. It was earlier on in the year, I think they said this around April, May timeframe. But they did say we should expect SQL Server reporting services integrated in Power BI for Office 365. The opportunity to integrate with analysis services on premise. What the Power Pivot workbooks. Power Pivot is really a kind of lightweight version of analysis services in Excel. So when your Power Pivot models start to get large and maybe even exceed the 250 megabyte limit for Power BI, you'll be able to throw those into analysis services, a server product, and use that as an on-premise data source, or potentially, I would imagine they'll do an Azure-based data source as well for your cloud report. They're going to do a native iOS client for Power BI for Office 365. So the Power BI Windows app we saw, I'd expect that that'll also come for iOS. We've seen some new data exploration modes in Power View. I saw a demo of this at one of the recent Microsoft conferences where you could change the visualization on the fly, just like Power Q&A does, where I get to change from a map to a table or a line chart. So we'll be able to do this on the fly in our Power View. So, for example, our scatter diagram that we had there, if we don't like it, if the user comes in, they're looking at the report, they don't like that, they prefer to see a pie chart, then they'll be able to change that on the fly. And again, a new key performance indicator editor for Power Pivot has also been talked about. So some of the nice updates. I'm particularly excited about reporting services. Around a while, and I've used that a lot, so that'll be really interesting to see how that works with Power BI for Office 365. Okay, so thanks for listening, everybody. I'm going to pass you back over to Ian.
Thanks, Matt. So, as we discussed earlier, in support of our consultancy engagement, we have a well-established managed services offering, which can monitor and optimize the end-to-end service we've designed and deployed. And when you consider what's important to a business in terms of information, and look at the infrastructure that underpins that, such as SharePoint, SQL, an Active Directory, etc., it's apparent that your investment in Microsoft solutions really is critical. And we've got a number of options designed specifically to leverage maximum value from that investment. Any of our managed services specialists are more than happy to conduct a free needs assessment, essentially to identify these critical line of business applications. And if that is of interest, please contact us on inquiries@risual.com for more information following this webcast. So our managed services come in 3 different flavors currently, and they are workload support, managed 365, and our managed service. Workload support has 2 options, and that's our standard service, which is a reactive phone-based service available Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. till 6 p.m., offering unlimited calls to all users. Our premium service, the step up from that, providing proactive monitoring and limited calls again on a 24/7, 365 days a year basis. It also includes application monitoring, daily health checks, and security management. Moving on to Managed 365, you have to appreciate Office 365 is an evergreen product. It's always changing. So how do we complement that as a service provider? So we utilize our premium support package, but we've also got a couple of additional options, and they are our service management pack, which allows us to triage all calls into Microsoft on your behalf, and it also allows us to perform some basic admin, such as the setup of new users and so on. We've also got our Maximizer service, where a consultant will come out on site to visit you in person, monthly or quarterly, however frequently you see fit. And they will update you on the changes that Microsoft have released and how this is going to affect you, your employees, and your customers. And finally, we have our managed service, which can be delivered per application or through to a full managed outsource, and be that whether you are on-premise, hosted, or in a cloud-based solution. Finally, if there's interest following this webcast, we're going to be looking to put on a number of knowledge share workshops. These can be either in a one-to-one engagement or with a number of customers. Both options will be hosted at our immersion centre here in Stafford. Please look out for those in the near future. If you wanted some hands-on experience, we can offer our BI Quick Start, which is a proof of concept, allowing you to dip your toe in the water and see if this is right for you. If you wanted to go a step further and engage one of our consultants, we have a commoditized approach in terms of design, plan, build, test, and deploy for you. For any Office 365 elements of this today, there are initiatives from Microsoft aligned to Fast Track, and that allows us to look at funding based on commitment to the platform. So that's it from me. We're now going to open up the lines for any questions that you may have.
And I'm just typing away in the chat here. So thanks to everyone that's asked questions so far. So hopefully everybody can see those. We've had a few questions around licensing and support for analysis services and reporting services. So just on the latter, if you have an on-premise analysis services and you want to be able to connect to that using from your cloud-based reports using the data management gateway, it's possible to expose the analysis services as an OData service. So your reports, your cloud-based reports would connect through the data management gateway to the OData service, which then connects to your analysis services, and then we'll pull the data for your report refresh. Now, yes, that's right. Now, in the future, they did say, as I say, late summer 2014, that analysis services is on the way. It's an on-premise data source, and it's one of those stumbling blocks for some people, because the analysis services is great to attach Power View to get visualizations. If you in particular got a data warehouse with a analysis services attached, your users will more than likely create Power Views off that. So that would be a real boost to Power BI. In terms of just a question come in terms of data size limitations, when you use OData for SSAS and SSRS, you'll still be limited by the 250 megabytes file size in, and that's, as I say, compressed data in Power BI. Or if you don't want all your users to have Power BI licensing and you just want to be able to browse the reports using Excel web services, then you'll just be limited to the 10 megs of compressed data there.